Welcome back to Littler House. In the last video, we finished the binding on our pocket edge, and today we're going to carry on with binding the rest of the pieces and putting the jacket together.
So we finished the binding on the edge of our two patch pockets. So we'll set these aside for now, and we will carry on by adding the binding to the center back seam of both of our main body pieces. So that's this long, straight edge that will be sewn together. Again, I'm doing this before I sew the pieces together because it will be easier then once we do seam them, the seam allowance will already be bound. I don't think you need to stay and watch me do this step by step. I do have another video posting shortly on applying bindings of various types. So please follow along with that one for the details on how to do this or how I did it for the pocket, because that is exactly the same as what I will do here. So I'll do this now and then I'll be right back. Okay, I think we are ready to move on to our next step, but I wanted to show you what I've done. So the bit that you saw in detail, of course, was the binding of these pocket edges, and you can follow exactly the same process for all of the rest of the edges that I did. It's no different. I will tell you though, honestly, I got a little tired of trying to line everything up so exact that I caught the back edge in and all of that. So what I ended up doing, because this is for inside seams in a house jacket, I decided it didn't need to be quite so pristine and precise. So what I ended up doing is once I sewed the binding to the right side and flipped it to the back side, I then did an edge zigzag stitch. And you won't be able to see it from this distance, but I'll try to show you a close-up later. But it is a zigzag stitch right down the edge of the binding so that I had a much greater chance of catching in the back side. And I didn't have to spend so much time pressing it all exactly all the way down the line. So a bit of a shortcut. And like I said, I decided to do that because this will never show. It's inside and it's a house jacket. So I think sometimes with sewing, you need to decide where your time is actually valuably spent, and that was not going to be a valuable spend of time. So I shortcutted a bit and did that. But what you will see is on every piece, I have kind of one or two edges still left unbound, and I'll show you why in a second. But here's my center back. Here is the sort of underarm. It's this seam here. And then for the sleeves, I have bound the two sides that will be sewn together, as well as the shoulder piece, underarm piece that is this seam here. That's this. Left this top bit raw, but when I sewed the dart, I did bind that as well. And then I actually stitched that down. I pressed that to the back like you would normally, and I went ahead and stitched that down. This is so bulky, it needed to be stitched in place or it would never stay. All right, so why didn't I do these top edges? Well, all of these top edges together make the neckline. So I'm going to show you how that will line up now. So if we start with the right side of our jacket, which is here, it will hang down this side of my body like this. Then I have a neckline piece here. That's this bit right here. It will join to a sleeve here. This sleeve will be attached like this on my jacket, right? And the neckline will attach like this. Okay, so here's my sleeve. Once we sew it together, obviously, here is neckline all the way to the center back. So this is center front all the way to center back. My other center back will attach next, right here. Then we have the second sleeve that will insert here along these seams. So that will attach there, and this will attach here. So I'm hoping you can see this, but this is my neckline, center front right here, all the way around to the back to the center front on the left. Once I sew all of these pieces together, that's the last bit I'll do, is this bound neck edge. It'll also be at this point that I will double check the fit to make sure I like the way that lays and I don't actually need to go ahead and cut and attach a hood. If we like this bound edge, our jacket will be finished. So keeping this hem detail when we cut this out has saved us a tremendous amount of time, and we actually don't have much left in this to finish it up. So next steps, I'm going to sew the two sleeves right sides together like this. I'll sew this underarm seam. That is this seam right here. I'll sew that for both sleeves. I wouldn't normally insert a sleeve like this in the round. It's going to be a bit tricky, I admit. But because we did away with our side seam, we don't have a choice. So we'll have to put this in the round. Like I said, it's going to be tricky, but we'll do that together and you can see how I manage it. And then I also will sew my center back seam, leaving about, I don't know, 6 inches or so open at the back, just as a vent here that'll just give me a little bit more ease of movement as I walk in this. But I'll do this seam, and then I will show you what all of this looks like, and I'll show you how I set in the sleeve in the round. So stay tuned and we'll do all those steps and then we're nearly done. Okay, so I have sewn my sleeve into shape here, as you can see, completed sleeve. So now we are going to attach it to the body piece. Very important that we make sure we get the back lined up correctly on the front and not get this turned around. I have bound my edge here. I can no longer see my notches. So when you do that, you either need to remark your notches so that you can find them later. I could have put a double mark here. Or what I did was, because I've already pressed and sewn down my dart towards the back, I know that this is the back. So that's fine. I'm not too worried about it. This is the back of my body piece. I know that because this center back is bound, where the center front is that original detail. So we want to line up right sides together, the back with the back, just like this. And then I think hopefully you can visualize how this is going to wrap around now and come up and meet the front there, and the sleeve will set in right there. Hopefully that's visible to you. It should become obvious as we work here. I'm just going to line up the edges up here at the top. I'm using clips because this is too bulky for pins. This is incredibly bulky now that we have it bound. Now I just put a couple of clips in and I'm going to switch to the front now and line them up. And the idea is I'm going to meet down here in the middle, just lining up the edges. I'm putting two clips here together to keep my seam allowance open as I pin it in place, because I want to make sure I don't end up with all of the bulk on one side or the other. It needs to stay open. Okay, so hopefully you can see that now, how that's pinned together, and the inside of the sleeve goes in there. From the outside, it will look like this, and our sleeve is set in here. I think that's probably really difficult to see, but hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so I'm going to just start stitching here now. I'm going to have the body of my garment on the bottom with the sleeve piece on top, and using a standard 3/8 inch seam and a normal straight stitch. Okay, now I'll be able to show you more clearly. One thing I didn't note earlier is I have not yet sewn my center back seams together. That is just to decrease the amount of fabric I'm dealing with here. If I'd already sewn this together, I'd have essentially the whole jacket I'm trying to maneuver here. So I decided I'd set the sleeves in first, and then I'll sew the back together at the end. So here's my sleeve set in. I hope this makes more sense now. You can visualize here's our center front and that raglan sleeve. So like I mentioned, the top raw edge of the sleeve forms part of the neckline, and I think you can visualize this now better. We have the center front around the neckline to the middle of the back here. All right, I'm going to do exactly the same thing for the other sleeve and then sew this center back seam together, and then we'll come back and I'll show you the neck edge. Right, so here's the jacket almost all put together. And as you can see, as I keep showing you, we have this wavy center front here. The sleeves are set in nicely. Everything inside is finished with this very nice white binding. I think the sleeves turned out really well. They were nowhere near as difficult to set in as I thought that they might be. So that was good. When I got down here to the slit, what I did was I pressed the seam open after I had stitched it, and I went ahead and pressed all the way to the bottom, and then I top stitched along the slit on both sides to secure that seam allowance down so it doesn't really show from the outside. So what we'll get is a completely finished opening here that I think will look tidy and nice there on the back. Okay, so where we are up to now, we have two things left to do. We have our patch pockets to put on, but if you recall at the beginning, I told you I was going to save that until very last. And the reason I like to do that is because I will try this on to determine the best placement for me, and then we'll decide then. Of course, I could do that now. The only thing left is this neck binding. At this point, it doesn't really matter, but I'm going to go ahead and wait and do the neck binding first. So we have our raw edge neckline up here, and all I'm going to do is bind it with the white binding as it stands, just like it is right now. And then we'll try it on and we'll decide if we like that neckline left like that, or if I'm going to need to put a hood on this to make it look more finished. Here's the almost finished jacket. I really like the way that it fits. It's very cozy and there's plenty of room to wear bulkier clothes underneath it in the winter. But I think this is just about perfect for me. So you can see I did press the neckline open to create a sort of lapel effect. I think it just looked better than it just kind of flopping around here. I could have added a closer instead up here. That would also look nice, a nice statement button sort of thing. But I decided to just press it open. If I find it won't stay, I may just tack it down a little bit. But I like the way that that looks. And I don't think it needs the hood. I think the bound neckline is plenty, and the hood would just simply be way too much bulk. It's already quite heavy and bulky along some of the seams. So I think it's perfect the way it is. So the final step now is I need to decide where I want to add my pockets, and I will do that based both on how it looks but also where my hand would naturally go, because I do actually use these pockets. And then I'll stitch them on and come back and show you the completely finished jacket in just a few minutes. Here's my finished jacket. I am super pleased with this. I really like the pocket placement here. It's quite low and they're very big pockets, but I do use them. You'll see that I decided as a design choice to leave the white binding showing on these pockets. The reason I did that is because you can also see the white binding up here on the neckline, and it's the only place that it shows. Otherwise, all of our binding is on the inside. And so in order to sort of make this a little more cohesive, I decided to show the brighter white binding down here on the pockets too. And I think it turned out really well. I'm pleased with it, and I think I'll get a lot of wear out of this winter. Thanks for joining me on this. If you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to leave me a message and I'll happily get back to you. Also, if you go ahead and like and subscribe, that helps me out a lot. I make no money from these videos. This is not monetized for me, but it helps me to know that this is interesting to you, and I'm happy to cover anything that you would like in future. Thanks very much. I'll see you next time.